Somebody gets out of hand, right? There's a lot here, they're gonna get out of hand.
Morning, sir. Yeah.
I'd like to start this February meeting of the Somerville Tree Protection Board. And the first item will be to approve last month's minutes. Are there any questions or discussion about last month's minutes?
Motion to approve.
Second. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved. First order of new business is 603 West Fifth North Street, otherwise known as Highway 78. Mr. Taylor.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, we are proposing a commercial building on this property. Looking to remove the trees in the area of the building and the parking. That's where the majority of the trees are. There are a couple that are just on the outside of the building footprint and slightly outside of the parking footprint. But we've tried to keep as many as we could that wouldn't interfere with the building or the parking. And we're leaving, I think, a total of 47 trees. So that's what we're trying to do there.
It was encouraging that there was enough along the periphery that you could get that number up there, even though it isn't even necessarily at a required level, it's more. But I just had a couple of thoughts myself, if you don't mind. We mentioned it when we were out there. It was really hard for us at any place we go, particularly this most recent one, because it was the most recent. Without corners visible when there's possible and it's not impractical to do that, we really are much better off being able to look and evaluate a site when we can see the corners, when we can see the boundaries. And I know that you've met you many times, and I know that you're local, so I would surely like that to occur in the future. I can't tell you to do that, but it makes it a lot easier. Because then it gives us options to think about moving a building. It's so hard to envision, because we had generalized spaces for the corner. And the other thought I had was, that's a pretty large parking area. I don't know what the total number of spots is. I didn't count them. I imagine there's an area. Did you ever consider, again, we're not having seen the whole thing demarked, whether there was a capability of having a tree saved in an island, as you see done so much in other parking lots. And I just wonder whether it was a possibility. I can't describe a need right now because I can't see the trees. So anyhow, those are my thoughts. Any others?
No, those are good thoughts. The only other thought I have is I would much rather see the corners staked, as you mentioned, in the future, though we can't mandate it. But short of that, to have the trees superimposed on this drawing of the parking lot and the building, or vice versa, the building superimposed on the drawing with the trees might be helpful as well. Just,
Right, we could-
when we go out and look at, and looked at your site, which was not a bad site to try to decipher, but even it was confusing, and you were doing the best you could, holding the plans and saying, well, we're gonna do it here and we're gonna do it here, but a little gets lost in the translation. So
Yeah.
anything that you as the builder can do to help us visualize is certainly helpful for us.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. In the future, I will definitely mark the trees. The parking area actually was larger. We've downsized the parking to accommodate the size of the building, and we took into account what the building was being used for. So the parking area did get actually smaller than what originally was on there. We were at, I think, like 40 spaces before, and now we're down to 26 or something. So we did downsize the parking area, which did save trees. And really, we couldn't move the building too much. I mean, we're set back for the widening of 78, so that's kind of set. And then left to right, we might could move it a little bit, but but yeah, we've done the best we could to get it there, and obviously save as many trees as we can. And I actually came before you guys a couple of months ago, and you gave us approval to take a hardwood down at Whitehall. I don't know if you recall that. There was an addition being built off the back of a house, and you guys gave us the approval to take that oak tree out. And you did in that meeting ask if we could somehow mitigate by planting some more trees. And I just want to let you know we did that. So we planted, we took down the oak tree, and I know we put up at least 2, if not three trees to help with that. So we certainly take your input and make sure we do that. So. Yeah.
Thank you.
Remembering the two, but I wish I could remember Whitehall, but I appreciate you telling us. that.
It's over in Newington, just to give you, so off of Bacon's Bridge, but yeah,
Right. Well, great. That's what we would
so yes, sir.
like
So,
for you to do.
and same thing here, we're going to be planting, quite a few trees for the buffers, along with the, bushes as well, but,
I wanted to ask also, the area between Palmetto and the building, it's not showing anything there right now. And I think there's a sidewalk proposed to go in there. Is there any room to plant additional trees in that little area there?
yeah, I
Okay.
would think there is. I mean, I'm looking at the site plan, and it looks like we've got decent room over there on that side.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, there and possibly on the other side, just any areas that you think you could, put a few trees in would be helpful also, just since that was a wooded lot, and kind of like to keep it that way, and more trees the better, but within limits, I understand. But just consider any areas possible for tree planting would be appreciated.
Absolutely.
Are you
Yeah.
talking about, point out where you're talking?
Right.
Okay. Is there landscape plan for the front along this frontage?
There is. I don't know if it's in this, but,
Okay.
Okay,
okay. Yeah, we had, I got you. Yeah, when we had come before the DBR, actually several times now, tweaking the parking and the building, design and colors and all that. I know there was a lot of discussion about, the bushes and the trees that'll be planted and what they were and where they're going. So yeah, we've certainly added more to what you're seeing here.
Mhm.
There is definitely more plants and bushes, going in there on the left-hand side, and then all across the front. Every building I put up, I love my palm trees as well. So there's 2 palm trees going in the front, and certainly on that Palmetto side, if there's room over there to get something, a live oak or something, that would be nice.
I think you were also going to try to find a replacement for the hackberry. We talked about that on site.
Yes,
The hackberry, sometimes they can be a problem as they mature. So maybe
Yes.
trying to find another plant to put in there instead.
that is correct. Yes, sir.
Any other questions, remarks? Could I have a motion?
Yeah, that's, I move to approve the removal permit as submitted.
I'll second it. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Stay dry.
Next order of business is 311 West Carolina Avenue. One live oak that's filled with brick and mortar. I know there's a lot of thoughts on this.
Yeah, it's a shame that someone in an effort to do good did something so bad some years ago. If that tree were not filled with the brick and the concrete, it might stand more of a chance of standing or being safer. But as it is now with that immovable object in the base, right below, not many feet, the beginning of a very wide crown that is angled towards the home, that immovable part of the trunk with the concrete just becomes a hinge. And so in the appropriate wind or actually just without it, the tree doesn't have any support there. And I think it's could be considered a hazard.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Nick, when you met with the homeowner there, do you know what kind of plans they have? They're gonna get rid of the tree possibly? Are they gonna go back and plant with anything else? Any kind of landscaping plans, tree replacement, anything like that?
Wasn't mentioned, she wasn't there at the time of my initial review, so I met her the day that we came out. For the board review.
Okay,
But I don't recall her mentioning releasing anything. It seems like she's got some kind of plans for up front, 'cause it's all been cleared out.
yeah, I agree.
Previously there, but, it wasn't mentioned as far as mitigation.
Well, I just think it, of course, should be strongly encouraged that she does go back in there with some kind of tree planting. And, I know we can't require any kind of mitigation in this case, I don't think. But, at least, urge her to try to go back and put some type canopy tree back in there. And the other thing is, it looked like, they had heavy equipment in there and they've got the other live oak closer to the road. And I just would hate to see them get in there with heavy equipment and compact that soil to the point where it might hurt that tree as well. So I don't know how we can monitor that, but just something to be aware of.
Nick, was she the only owner? Do you know?
I believe so, I'm not sure, but she's the only one that was on the application that I've met, so.
Because there wasn't much of a plan there and she didn't really have a lot of knowledge about which shoreline went where and just took the word of somebody that, because that was a whole different issue. The roots were interfering with the shoreline. We're much more concerned about the danger of the tree. This is a good one and maybe a good opportunity since principal members of staff are here. Is this a case where it's not a slam dunk that this tree is diseased and dying, as the quote goes. We've had situations like this before, but different, where we almost literally didn't require mitigation, particularly with the willingness of the owner of the property. So I'm going to just throw the question out here. Is there any alternative to just are not saying we can't ask for mitigating because we're approving the removal of the tree? It's a theoretical question. And so I just thought I'd toss that out there because we're gonna get more of these. And the reason I even mention that is because it's a substantial iconic tree. It's a live oak. It has a beautiful canopy despite all its ills. And it's in a historic part of town. Can we or should we even attempt to be more forceful in our encouragement to mitigate that tree? It's gonna make a big hole in that front yard. Property values, again, none of our business, but surely will be impacted by a big vacancy that's there. And the trees along the front of the street are questionable in terms of their longevity.
Backyard development, I think it's very much, there are very few trees left on the spot, there are 5 trees. A lot of them. Beginning or late stage.
Mhm.
There is, none of them were on the application, live oak was the only one. that's
Right.
from Bill. There's one on the back that has tape around it that needs to go. That's something that maybe when I reach out to the homeowner too, I thought.
Right.
Is there a way that you could let her know about the possible damage that could be done when heavy equipment comes in too close to these trees and damage roots and then later find out, oh, well, isn't that sad? That's too bad.
I can, but without any kind of assessing for a permit for what she did, I can't really force rejection. It's not, she never applied for a permit. She did, nobody should be. I can suggest it. That'll be to her discretion whether she takes that.
She may not be aware of the damage that could be done. And I just would like to have her part of the educational process.
So I was sort of obliquely asking a question to you.
I mean, it's y'all's discretion whether to ask for mitigation or not. I mean, like you said, on this one, it's clearly not dead. I mean, it could technically be argued that every tree is dying. I mean.
Yeah,
y'all
so,
see.
so I'll wait, right?
Whether that's what they take into account, but I was gonna say every tree probably has some type of disease. I mean, kind of like people.
Yeah.
You know, but, so I mean, I think it's up to your discretion as to what you choose to require. Obviously, you're not gonna require her to replace it inch by inch, but
No,
you could certainly ask for, you know, a limited number of trees to try to help replace the canopy that's being lost.
Okay.
And what's the rationale? Why can we do this? When we've sort of been led to believe, or I have thought that maybe we couldn't in a situation like this because it doesn't necessarily fit the description of dead, disease, or dying.
right.
Well, tell me how I want to do it. I just want to, how can we do it? What gives us the right to demand mitigation?
I mean, I think it's up to your discretion. It's more, I don't know that we can enforce the mitigation, but you can certainly request the mitigation as a, you know.
So it's a request, not part of the, it's not part of the permit to remove. It's just,
In those situations, just for me, I put mitigation highly encouraged.
And-
okay.
And it actually, I would say I have a higher success rate with that than I do with enforcement. A lot of people, they kind of light up and see possibilities and we say, I'm not gonna make you do it. But I really think that especially with water collection and reallocation, a lot of people, yeah, that's a good idea. Okay.
Right.
And with the number of trees on that property that are not in good shape, it would be a good thing to have.
I think reinvigoration of the landscape is kind of
Mhm.
considered important. It's time for some trees.
Anything else?
Yep.
So the question, the question I have now is if we can strongly suggest mitigation,
Yes.
what, what do we want to ask for mitigation? So even though the trees in the backyard, and are there other trees in the lot that will soon be on their way out? I don't know that we can address those because the application is just for this one tree.
Yeah.
So the question is what's that one worth? I mean, if you think about just canopy, it's worth a hell of a lot. But what's reasonable? 2 trees, 2 3-inch trees? Because
I don't,
Can we let Nick kind of go out there and meet with her and Nick come up with a number? Would that work?
And
Canopy. Time, this is my last week,
Oh.
so I will try, but I'll probably have to just shoot her an email, with the. results of the work.
Okay.
canopy trees rather than, excuse me,
right, well, I want to strongly suggest live oak because that's just an icon and
That area
it
especially.
is,
nothing but live oaks in that area. right?
yeah, and it certainly is adding to the property value of that home.
And if we're taking out a live oak, it would be appropriate to replace it with a younger, healthier
Right.
live oak.
I would look at it as the EVH of the living canyon. Mitigation.
Yeah, well, it's not going to take that. I don't think the front yard would accommodate that many.
Well, I don't know if it's got that much living canyon. I think so.
Yeah.
Well, I bet,
say?
I bet it's 6 to 8 inches around the circumference.
Well, but I'm saying if you made that one tree, it might be, probably 12 inches of.
Well, yeah,
Anyway.
yeah, your last week, get as
More
much,
joking.
your last week, get as much as you can. So, so I'd like to make a motion. So I move that we approve the removal of the live oak tree with encouragement to plant 3 replacement trees on the property, one of which should be at least a 3-inch live oak. We should replace with 3 canopy trees, at least one of which should be a 3-inch live oak.
I second that.
Any more thoughts? The motion is seconded. Anything else?
Nope.
All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Last item is 111B, Canvasback Drive. Great big old loblolly pine. Nothing wrong with it. Close to the house. The owner feels that the separation in the sheetrock wall is attributed to presence of the tree roots. We saw no damage to the foundation adjacent to the tree. I have trouble thinking that the sheetrock would be shifting if there was no effort on the part of the tree to disrupt the foundation slab house.
Right, and as we remarked, those lines of where the sheetrock are very straight.
Yeah.
And if the foundation were moving and causing the sheetrock to shift, I suspect it would be more of a jagged line as opposed to something that vertical.
Yeah, I just didn't see any issues with the tree itself. It looked to be in perfect health. And I agree with Peter and Danny. I just didn't see any issues with the foundation, the outside wall of the house. And just looking at those pictures of the inside, I just don't think that's from any disturbance from the roots of the tree.
Of course, if the applicant can show that there is foundation damage, we can certainly revisit. But I didn't see any.
And we did look.
Yeah, yes, we did. Yes, we did.
Any other suggestions or thoughts? Could I have a motion?
Yeah, I moved to deny the permit to remove the pine tree on the side of the house.
Second motion.
Motion is seconded. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. the last item, business. Is a discussion of changes to improvements to
Yes.
our tree improve, our ordinance. Tree ordinance.
Right. So in the urban forest master plan that was approved back in July, one of the main goals was to refine our tree ordinance to make it better, to improve it. There were kind of 6 main action items they noted. One of those is to refine the tree protections by zoning category and creating separate provisions for large developments. One is to expand the mitigation fees to consider the value of the tree being removed, using certain appraisal methods. One was to have utility permits for trimming and removal and more oversight of utility companies. Another one is to make the tree fund spending more flexible in terms of what it can be spent on, rather than just new plantings, also be able to use it for maintenance and that type of thing of trees. Another is better coordination between the DRB and yourself. That could also be applied to the BAR in certain instances as well. And then the last one was related to relocating utilities underground, which our ordinance pretty much already requires for new utilities, but it doesn't require necessarily for relocation, for existing utilities. So I just we're going to start trying to look at ways to make these changes, but I also obviously wanted to give y'all the opportunity to discuss any other potential changes or improvements that you felt would be something we needed to look into. What I'd like to do is, once we kind of have some examples of ways to address this, is schedule a workshop with y'all to get input, and then get some public input as well. Because I know we have a lot of public that are interested in this ordinance. So, I'm not looking really for any action today. It's more just an introduction, although if y'all do have any comments currently about things you'd like us to specifically look at ways to address. One, just in the discussion this morning that popped in my head, was maybe our mitigation needs to be worded differently and not just not require mitigation for trees that are dead, diseased, and dying, but look at maybe an overall canopy percentage on a lot, and make it so you have to maintain that canopy even if you're having to take out trees that are dead, diseased, or dying. Because like Nick said, sometimes you have properties where every tree could conceivably be dead, diseased, or dying, and then you lose the entire canopy for that lot. And we wouldn't require any mitigation. Excuse me. So I think that's something we probably need to look at the wording on there, kind of like we do with new construction, where you have to keep a certain either percentage of number of trees, or maybe look at it canopy wise rather than number wise, or inch wise. So that's something I'm going to go ahead and write down. But if there are any other suggestions that you do have currently that we can go ahead and start taking a look at, but otherwise, if y'all have any ideas, feel free to email me, call me, stop by, and we'll try and at least get some ideas on changes that could be made, not necessarily put it in an ordinance format yet, but get those ideas of ways that we can address these changes, and then schedule a workshop with y'all to discuss them further, or potentially add it to another one of your regular agendas. But generally, it's easier to do it in a more workshop discussion rather than y'all being up there.
Yep.
So
I agree.
So what is the pathway of this? There's a lot there, and all that. The 6 items are all wonderful, and we can speak them directly now to some of them, but we'd be preaching to the choir. Things like bring back mitigation for residential, monetary mitigation. We don't need to belabor that, and some of the points about wording it differently and being more sensitive to the overall canopy. That's excellent. But all this would be gathering the workshop, public input, with the direction of going to council.
correct. Yeah. The idea is that we would get everything, get input from yourself, from the public, put it into ordinance amendment format and present it to council to amend basically chapter 8 of the UDO. And I would obviously hope that council would be involved in the process of input prior to just presenting to them the
Right.
changes.
Would it be, is your goal to have everything completed before you even step forward and introduce council to this, or would there help along the way? Or could it be done, some things are more urgent than others, is what I'm saying.
Well, unfortunately, I think it's going to be better received if it's all done as a whole. I don't want to try and piecemeal it where we're doing little changes throughout, because I mean, there may be parts of the ordinance that really just need to be completely changed. Our current mitigation charts, for instance, if we decide to treat that differently, then that's really going to need to change more as a whole than just trying to piecemeal it. So I'd like to have it done together as a whole, because I think council also views it better if you do it as a whole, rather than being like, well, I want this little change, and then I want this little change, and then I want this little change. And then it ends up taking just as long to get it done. So I'd like to do it all
Yeah,
together.
well, I just wanted to ask because I know you deal with this much more than we do in terms of interfacing with that and the reality of getting things approved or not. So that's why I asked.
Yeah, and I mean, it may be that we introduce it as a whole and certain things get taken out based on council's views. I don't know, but I would like to have them, like you said, involved throughout the process, not just present it to them
Yeah,
once
well,
it's,
that's the
once it's
ideal, yeah.
complete. So that's, something I'll be reaching out to them about as well, to let them know we're working on this. And if they have any suggestions as well. And of course, when we have public input, also, obviously invite them to attend as well.
We're gonna have a workshop on this.
I don't know when yet. It kind of depends. Obviously, we've got to get a new arborist in place. And I would like to have their input as well. So it will probably be a few months before we actually schedule a workshop to discuss the first. But I'm hoping once we get to that point, it won't take too much longer before we move forward with it. But I do want to make sure we do it right and not just try and rush it just to get certain changes in place, which I know are more urgent than others. We've kind of been doing some workarounds on some of those that you're talking about. So we'll continue to do some of those workarounds as it is now. But yeah.
It would be good, I think, if we're gonna need to wait a couple of months at least and perhaps longer to have a workshop, it'd be good and we can do it informally among ourselves, to have discussions about things, whether we just meet here and do it as part of these meetings or do it another way. For instance, the concept of maintaining a canopy on a property, that sounds good right off the bat, but I think there might be some issues with it. So I mean, that's something that we probably need to discuss in earnest and look at the details and the definition of dead, disease, or dying. At the very least, that needs to be, I think, refined or added to structurally unsound or something. So yeah, there's lots of things we could begin to discuss, and I think that would be a good thing to do while we wait to get our workshop together.
I did have one thing just before I lost my voice as down my wrist. That's more just food for thought, because I think have to be dissected, but it always kind of weighs on me when I'm particularly in new developments. I'm kind of meditating on the relationship between understory and canopy in a natural forest. So I've always been interested in maybe trying to work in a ratio that would allow for more understory planting. That I see places like White Gables where it's great to have some live oaks, but I have a lot of applications for removal of live oaks.
Yeah.
So I think it's something that's practical and may be environmentally more sustainable for the town to have a more relationship between the urban forest. And would make pushing for mitigation a little easier if we say, one canopy tree and a healthy array of 3 or 4 understories that have a relationship with that canopy. We're trying to build a natural forest. Always kind of leaves something.
I agree. I absolutely agree.
So Nick, when you're talking about White Gables, we're talking about it just in the yards out there, they're planting these trees,
Yeah,
canopy
just any of the-
or street trees or what?
Like I've got in 6 Oaks, where they're planting willow oaks and live oaks that are right next to the house.
Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
I can ask them to move it, but it's not lost on me that willow oak's massive.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe it would be better to have some tags or something for pollinators. But it's also environmentally valuable to have a relationship with that canopy.
I think that's a good point. So some of the yards, especially in cul-de-sacs, they're so small and they're trying to plant a live oak there. It's just going to engulf the entire front yard. They're beautiful and all that, but I'm not sure if that's the right tree for that particular spot.
I just think a diverse native forest is a healthy forest.
Mhm. Yeah.
Try to think of town as a forest, not so much of a town. It's a forest with houses. That's how it gets rid of pollen itself. It's true to the US.
A lot of things have happened since it assumed the name of Tree City USA. Particularly in terms of new development. I know what you're talking about. Huh?
That gets thrown in my face a lot.
Yeah. There's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah.
Absolutely nothing. I know White Gables, I mean, there's nothing but trees going to get in trouble out there. Absolutely none. Side of the road, live oaks, back from the sidewalk, all that, it's just inevitable. Having small lots tends to contribute to that problem.
Right.
What can I say about that?
Also, if y'all are aware of any other municipalities or even counties that have ordinances that you think do a good job of addressing certain aspects that I should take a look at, if y'all could let me know of those as well, I'd appreciate it.
Said you were gathering up Greenville's new.
Yeah, I've got Greenville's, I've got, City of Decatur's, Nick sent me to Cobb County. I think theirs is probably similar to Decatur's, but, I'm gonna get Decatur, Georgia.
Oh.
Charlotte, North Carolina, gonna gather theirs. I know they've done a lot of, they did a master plan, they have a management plan, so I'd like to see how they handle theirs. I know they have a lot of trees. I'm gonna look at City of Atlanta. That's a big tree focused municipality as well. See how they handle it, certain aspects and maybe anytime we do ordinance amendments, we try not to have to reinvent the wheel, try and find folks who are doing a good job already and basically steal what they've done, but fit it to work for Somerville. So obviously you can't steal it and do it exactly. You gotta have to adjust it some to fit our environment and our municipality, but try not to have to completely come up with our own new ordinance.
Right.
So.
Is there a way that we could have somehow in the ordinance even in the application of permit, the order of permits that they need to get rather than coming in here and not having some of the permits that they should have had prior to coming
I
here?
mean, so we do let them know at TRC, everything that needs to be done. It's just, admittedly, we've been encouraging them to come to y'all first, rather than waiting until they've already gone to DRB and that type of thing, because once they've gone to DRB, they kind of get stuck in with their site plan and don't want to change it. And so if they come to y'all first, we'd rather them take the trees into account first and design around the quality trees rather than, go to DRB, get stuck in on that site plan and then have to come back. Y'all tell them, no, we're not going to let you take these trees. And then they're having to start the whole process over. They generally don't like that either. So we are encouraging them to come to y'all first, very early on in the process.
You're encouraging who?
Developers, when they go to the technical review committee.
They
Basi-
can't be directed to do so.
No, we're basically telling them you need to apply to the, if sites where we know there's a large number of trees or a large number of grand trees, we're basically telling them they need to apply to y'all at the same time or before they apply to DRB conceptually. Because the trees are gonna have a large bearing on the site plan.
But we also, there's a double-edged sword there, because when we deal with a large thing, I think of a couple of looked at, but most particularly Maple Street, with no idea what they're even going to be putting out there. And just go out there on the trees, that's difficult too. Where do you start drawing the line? And you pointed out, well, if there's clusters of areas of trees that you think really need to be saved, and a large property like that, that probably has more possibility, except for how it's zoned. What is the limit of pervious space that they have? Are they allowed to just take everything anyhow, you know, because they only have 10% pervious allowed or necessary? But when we go out into a woods and, you know, again, back to Maple Street, we were lucky or whatever, able to save the pocket of trees that we thought was effective for the overall. It was a very small part of the whole property. You know, really big for us. We don't really look at things that big, but with no idea of a footprint on something that's going to have a huge footprint, I find it difficult to start postulating about we can't let them go, because the reality of it is they're going to get most of it anyhow. It just makes it, I'm not saying this is a bad idea, but it's difficult, and I'm sure you appreciate that. I mean, you've done this more than once.
Yeah, I mean, I understand it's difficult to just look at the trees and not know what's going there, but I think the point we were trying to make is that that's where we want developers to start from, to look at the trees, determine which trees are the best to, you know, highest quality, what groupings of trees they want to save, and design their site around that, rather than just designing their site to fit as much as they can. And so we want y'all to play a part in determining what trees they should be focusing on.
And that can work if the developer comes to meet with us is prepared.
Right.
If they're prepared to do more than just talk and say, well, over there and over here, or to hold a set of plans and say, and say, well, we're talking about over here, because it is hard. I'm not an architect. I've done a lot of site review, but I'm not an architect. It is hard sometimes to translate from a set of drawings to the field. If we can require them to have it staked out, then it makes it much easier for us to say, well, okay, we can now see where we can save some trees, or ask you to save these trees as opposed to removing them. But they're going to need to come more prepared if we're going to be able to do a good job at it.
Yeah, I mean, we tell them they're supposed to have the trees overlaid on any conceptual plan. That is actually a requirement. They are also, and I feel like Mike does have that somewhere. We just apparently didn't have it in the tree permit, but they're supposed to have the trees overlaid on any conceptual site plan. They're supposed to have all the grand trees evaluated by a certified arborist and provide that before they come to y'all. Otherwise, yeah, you're kind of just, there's not much you can do. You don't have time to evaluate all the trees yourself, obviously. What you should be focusing on is having that information ahead of time, being able to realize, okay, these trees are Ds and Fs. We don't really need to focus so much on them, but the higher quality trees, how is there a way that we could work with the developer to make sure these are taken into account with the design of the site? So that is something they are supposed to be having before they come before y'all.
Well,
Conceptualized drawing.
Yeah, with the conceptual drawing, the only reason we didn't do the conceptual drawing with the apartments was because I think y'all were focusing so much on the buildings that you weren't focusing on the trees. You were just looking at the buildings and how many buildings there were and all the parking, and it was just kind of overwhelming you. And so I was like, just take the conceptual out, have them just look at the trees and focus on which trees they think are good trees. And then we can look at it in relation to the site plan to see how that can be adjusted, which was what fortunately their engineer was able to do. After, y'all she did that at the same time y'all were doing that.
but it didn't, just so that you know, it didn't make any sense until we had walked the property And then she came and did a demonstration. So, I mean, it didn't make any sense until then. Then it became quite easy. So my point remains that they need to be prepared.
Yes. And we're letting them know that, you know, at TRC before they go to DRB or y'all, letting them know you need to be able to explain, you know, which trees you think you can save, how you're designing, how you take them into account when you design the site, and be able to explain that rather than just say, well, we were trying to fit 200 apartments and this was the best way to do it.
Mm.
So,
Okay.
That's the ideal world, yes.
yes, we're forcing more of them, and certain engineering firms are better at doing that than others. And we're trying to make it clear, because I mean, we generally work with most of the same firms over and over again on the larger projects, at least, trying to make it clear to them that this is our process now. This is what you need to be looking at. You don't come to us with a preliminary plan already in place that you haven't even done the full survey of the trees yet. We don't want to see it. Like you need to look at the trees first in relation to what you're trying to accomplish. So,
Well, do tell them, and forgive me for beating this dead horse, but when we were talking about those apartments and the engineer who came and made it more clear, when we met initially with the engineer that was sent down here to do this, that guy didn't know anything that was.
yeah,
going
I'm
on.
not.
He couldn't
I-
answer any
I was gonna
question.
say, I have no idea why they sent that gentleman. He had not been involved in the project at
Okay.
all. My guess was, unfortunately, I guess the time y'all go do the site visits, I guess my guess was the other engineer who'd been in charge of the project wasn't available at
Right,
that time.
okay.
And they felt like they had to send someone. That's my only guess, but yeah, that gentleman hadn't been involved in the project at all. So it's not surprising that he had no clue.
Yep.
I think they realized their mistake with that, when we contacted them and basically said, hey, that wasn't helpful at all. Like
Okay.
he had no idea how to answer their questions. You might as well have not sent anybody.
Yeah,
Right.
So, yeah.
He usually brings plans with him. That's one time that I have.
I was gonna say, most engineers always have the plans. I mean, even when we have the plans, they usually always have them and have already marked up things like she did when she came, but my guess is it didn't work for her schedule and they didn't have time to find somebody else to let them know. But,
Very nice.
yeah, I think. And she even apologized to us and said, yeah, we should have realized that wasn't going to work. So, which was why she made sure she could be here the next time y'all met.
She was good and helpful and very good at explaining everything. It made all the difference in the world.
Right.
And that's why after we saw the changes, and although I still didn't know at the time that the DRB had approved our recommendations for that site, Tim felt comfortable that they would. That's sort of why, I know whether, I guess that's something to do with everything falling apart, so we didn't have that final walkthrough with her. I regret that in some ways, but I was pretty comfortable with what she.
Yeah.
outlined.
And I think there's got to be a better way for y'all to work together with the design boards and,
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
hoping I can find something in, Charlotte's or Atlanta's or something that kind of has a process that works. Cause there's got to be a better
Yeah,
way
that
than
would be
y'all
Very helpful.
saying something and then them saying something and y'all trying to figure out what they
Mhm.
said and us being the go-between, but not having y'all actually talk to each other. So I think there's got to be a better way to handle it. I'm hoping I can find some examples of ways that's done in other places.
The reluctance to do so.
I don't know that there's a reluctance to do so. I think we just don't have a good method of handling it currently and trying to find the best way. Obviously, y'all are volunteers. We don't want to give y'all any more meetings than you already have. So I think part of that is finding a way where y'all can potentially meet together that doesn't necessarily require, y'all already have 2 meetings a month, doesn't require 3 or 4 meetings a month where you're it's becoming less of a volunteer position. So I think that's part of the struggle. And particularly with the DRB members, most of them are, you know, busy in their day jobs, and it is harder for them to find time when they can set aside.
Yeah.
So that's part of it as well. But like I said, please just shoot me an email, give me a call, or, you know, let me know you want to come by and discuss it, and I can certainly certainly do that. And that way we can try and get some good ideas in place before we really start working on ordinance changes.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Thank you, Jesse.
Are there any other thoughts, questions, concerns? About trees?
Not in general, no.
Is this Nick's last meeting with us?
It is.
It is.
Certainly like to recognize Nick for the fine job he's done and, you know, wish him the best in Georgia.
As good as anybody can do in Georgia, with all respect to Decatur. I was making a bad joke.
Yeah, we appreciate
We need to have
as
time.
much, as fast as you became an arborist, as eager as you were to learn. In such a short time, that was very impressive. We miss what you ultimately could be, but you gotta go where the action is. Appreciate it, and as I told you earlier, I hope maybe there's a moment in your last week that maybe we can get together and you're gonna let me know about that since you have total control of your schedule and we don't. So thank you.
Thank you. I definitely, learned an immense amount of knowledge from all of you. So I'm a better arborist for every conversation I've had with you all. Thank you.
And also appreciated, as I know Danny does and everyone else, your incredibly well spokenness. And you're able to reach into other areas for esoteric or otherwise for descriptions and impressions. Most appreciated. You bet. Anything else?
No.
Said I'm waiting, so I'll make a move that we adjourn.
Second.
Favor?
Ah.
Opposed? We adjourn.
Do we know when we're gonna have a little something for Nick?
Nick's got to tell us, I
That's not-
believe.
tell us.
Well, he's running out
Sounds
of
like
time.
he's not very busy this week, though.
He's running out of time.
He's gonna tell us.